I'm still getting goosebumps thinking about this. You could see them looking as if like, what the hell was that? And it went quiet again, and everyone was kind of standing around looking, and then we heard it again. I was like, this isn't happening again. I'm out of here. So I got back into the car, and my girlfriend was sitting there. I was like, I think I heard the Banshee. I felt like something was standing in the room next to me. It was a very strange feeling. It's an eerie feeling. They say she's horrifying to see.
This is the Cryptid Creatures Podcast. I am Brian, and with me as always is my co-host Todd. How's it going, buddy?
It's going good, man. I finally got my yard mowed today, so I'm happy about that.
Before it rains again?
Yeah, before it rains again. But, you know, I was thinking while I was mowing, I was like, well, if it's warm enough to mow, then by golly, it's warm enough to get out and do some squatching.
Darn right it is.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Sure wish we could.
About time to get out and check some things out here pretty soon.
It's getting to be that time of year.
Yeah. So definitely ready for that. We gotta make something happen.
Yep. We'll head up to the Great White North.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Maybe even find a dog man, your favorite.
Oh boy, can't wait. You know, one place that would be cool to go look at cryptids though would be Ireland.
Oh man, yeah, that'd be great. They have some really cool ones over there that I'd like to see. We
actually have a guest tonight who is from Ireland who's going to talk about that with us.
Yes, our first international guest.
Correct. We're going to bring Ryan on the show to talk about some cryptids over there and see what he's got going on.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Sounds like fun.
Let's see what he's got to say. Ready?
Yep. Let's get him.
Okay. Ryan, thanks for coming on and talking to us today.
No worries, lads. You doing all right?
Yeah, I'm doing good.
Doing good,
Good
man.
stuff.
Yeah, you reached out to us and we're talking about some things, crazy things going on over there. What kind of things are you talking about? What kind of things are you guys seeing or running into over there?
Well, the most popular one that people usually see here, I'm sure you've probably heard of the Banshee before.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she'd be really steeped in the Irish mythology, but even to this day, people are still reporting haven't heard her or haven't seen her. I've heard her twice, I believe. So if you want to hear them stories, I'm happy to tell them.
What is the Banshee?
So the Banshee, Irish mythology can be a bit messy at times. There is two beliefs of how she came into being. She's believed to be a spiritual, paranormal type of being. And basically one of the old stories in Irish mythology is that one of the great heroes in Ireland, Irish mythology, Cuchulainn, he was believed to have been chased around the country by this old hag named Mal. And at one point he got to like a sea stack on the very coast, which is where I actually had one of my experiences. And he said to have leaped across and then back onto the mainland. But when she tried to follow him back onto the mainland, she fell into the sea. And her body is believed to have washed up by where the Cliffs of Moher is. And that area to this day is still called Hag's Head. So maybe there is something in it. Like
maybe there's something to that one, yeah.
And the other story is that back in would have been the 1100s in Ireland, there were these women, kind of like witches. They lived on the outskirts of town, but they were really well respected, and they were called Bankina, and that's an Irish word, and that translates literally to crying women. And these women were brought into funerals to literally wail for the dead, and it was thought that this act helped them pass over to the other side. So that's also a possibility as to where the legend of the Banshee began. Or is it a legend?
Is it?
So like a screaming woman, so to speak, is kind of the whole gist of the thing? Or
yes,
a crying woman?
But it's said that when you hear her scream, someone nearby it is going to die. You're going to hear about a death. And it said if you've seen her, that's your ticket has been punched there.
Oh.
Yeah, that's only if you've seen her. I've been lucky enough not to see her. I have a few reports of people who have seen her, though, and they seem to survive, so I don't know if there's anything to that. But my experience with the Banshee, the first one, I would have been about 10 years old, and I used to be in the Scouts here. And we were up in the Dublin Mountains one night. We were doing an overnight hike for charity. And, we were up there with a couple of other Scout groups. They had a banjo, a guitar, and a bodhrán. We were all playing a few songs and singing. And it was... I'm still getting goosebumps thinking about this. There was one point we literally had just stopped the song, and it was dead quiet. And as soon as the song stopped, you could just hear it like this... just trailing out into the distance like that. The leaders are there and they're like, oh, it's a barn owl. Oh, that was a female fox. And, we could see them looking as if like, what the hell was that? And it went quiet again, and everyone just kind of standing around looking. And then we heard it again, just that. And having been in the Scouts myself, I have heard female foxes calling it barn owls, barn owls calling it. It does sound like that, but it's in short bursts. It doesn't go on as long as that, like. But eventually, that was it. As soon as the second time heard it, we all just packed up and got out of there. And one of the guys I was in the Scouts with, we found out in school that 2 days later that his granny had actually passed away over the weekend. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess there is something to that then. Wow.
There could be. The second time was only actually earlier on this year. It was just in March, the very start of March, just before I got in contact with you. I was down where I spoke about what happened with Mal and Cuchulainn down there in County Clare. And I was standing out around behind the CSAC having a look at it. It was dead quiet and there's no trees or anything around there. There was no wind. And then I just heard it was like a... And it just trailed like that for about 30 seconds. I was like, this isn't happening again. I'm out of here. So I got back into the car and my girlfriend was sitting there. I was like, I think I heard the Banshee. And she thinks I'm a bit nuts. So she was like, oh, that's great, babe. Good for you. But we were actually back in the hotel that night and I felt like something was standing in the room next to me. Just, that uncomfortable feeling. Now, I've suffered with sleep paralysis in the past, but it was nothing like that. I was kind of sat and I felt like there was something behind me holding my hand. It was a very strange feeling. And it was when I went back to work the following week that a lady I actually worked with came and told me that her mother-in-law had passed away that weekend.
Wow.
So, it's an eerie feeling. It's not something I'd ever fancy.
I got the goosebumps from that one.
Yeah, they say she's horrifying to see. She appears as an old woman, kind of hooded and cloaked. And it's just, she seems normal at once and she'll kind of gesture for you to come towards her. And then when you do actually come towards her, she just bursts into this horrible looking old hag and just screams at you.
You had said you knew a couple of people, I thought earlier, that had seen one, or you'd heard about some guys that had seen one. Do you know how they described it? Did they talk about what they saw?
The only time I've ever actually spoken to a woman, and I met her just by chance when I was vacationing in Ireland, and I stopped and talked to her, and I was wearing a t-shirt that said the Banshee lives at the time. And she was like, oh, I've seen her. I was like, you've seen her? And she was like, yeah. I was like, did that not terrify you? And she said, no, I thought she was homeless. She was sitting on a bench, hunched over. So I walked up and asked her, was she okay? And she turned and she let out this scream. And she said it was like deafening. It was like it's like she had an out of body experience. And then when she kind of snapped back to herself, she was gone. And this woman claims to have heard the Banshee numerous times. And I said, well, how do you feel about that? And she said something that kind of stuck with me for a while. She's like, well, I actually find it quite comforting. I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, sure, she's coming to let me know that someone I know has died, but she's crying for that person. She is grieving for that person. She's feeling pain for that person. And I had never looked at it that way before, but it's a much better way to look at it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've listened to stories about people seeing a woman in white, like a ghostly figure in white, walking along an abandoned road by, woods or something like that. They kind of see her out in the middle of nowhere, like where you'd see a Bigfoot or something like that. They notice a woman ghostly walking in white. And I'm wondering if that's not kind of the same thing. What's going on there? Some kind of spirit or what have you?
It kind of could be the same thing. Like, I'm a big believer in kind of residual hauntings, if you understand what that means. Basically, a residual haunting is when something has happened in a place, like something absolutely traumatic has happened, that it leaves an imprint in that area, and it's like time repeats itself. And that's possibly what people are saying there. Like, the atrocities that happened in Ireland over the centuries are just, they're unspeakable, some of them, especially when it comes to some of the stuff the Catholic Church did, and especially when the British were ruling here. And I'm not having a go at any British people here, but shit happened, and we've all learned to just move on with it. But it happened, and it's possible that's left a mark on the landscape.
Yeah,
and that's possibly
it's very possible.
happening. It's possible what them people are seeing.
Right.
Yep.
When you heard this screaming, did you get sick, feel uneasy, want to throw up, and kind of infrasound weirdness going on like that?
You kind of get chills, and it's kind of like time stops around you. Everything's dead silent. Like, there's no other sound. You're just hearing this. Like, there could be noise around you, but you're not hearing it. This is all you're hearing. And it just kind of gives you, you know, when you get bad news and you're like, oh, that feeling in your stomach, like it just turns into a knot.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what it feels like. And you're stuck in that moment. You want to move, but you can't. You just need to wait for it to end. And then when it, like the first time it happened, we stood there and we heard it again. And then the second time it happened, when it stopped, I was like, right, I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm not hearing that again.
Are people reporting this happening a lot around wooded areas?
It would kind of happen. It just happens about anywhere. The most popular places for it to happen would be in the west of Ireland, which would be the more rural parts of the country, like the likes of County Galway, County Clare, all that side, County Sligo, County Mayo. All these kind of places are where it's mostly reported. Which you hear it oftentimes happening in the cities. Like one of my best friends claims to have actually seen the Banshee when he was younger, and the story he told me is it's mind blowing. Like, he said she wasn't howling or anything, but she was on a roof, and she was slowly moving across these rooftops, and they were just a bunch of kids at the time, and they just kind of looked at it and they were like, "Oh, that's just some woman on a roof for a random reason." But they said the way she moved across the roofs was she was just totally still, and it was like she glided. And as you said, the description was all dressed in white. So I don't know what he saw, but he saw something. Like, he wouldn't just make this up. It's kind of like people with Bigfoot. It's like they're seeing something. They're not making it up. They are seeing something.
Right.
Yeah, that whole gliding thing and the moving across, you know, you kind of want to think on the paranormal side, this thing is for sure. But I'm not too familiar with Ireland, but I do know you guys got some heavy, dense wooded areas out there, do you not? And some mountain ranges and everything?
We have a lot of, I wouldn't say heavily dense wooden areas. There was a point where in Ireland you could go from the very northern tip of the country to the very southern tip without setting foot on ground. We used to be covering that much forest. We used to have bears here, wolves here, lynx here, wild boar here, Irish elk here, all since gone extinct. But yeah, there are still some pretty heavily wooded areas around here, especially in the mountainous areas.
You say all those animals have gone extinct there?
All those animals have gone extinct here,
Wow.
but we found fossils of them, which gets into me saying, I know you're Bigfoot guys, which gets me into saying, I don't think there could be Sasquatches here right now, but I'm not saying that it's a possibility that there wouldn't be. Mm-hmm. You know,
right?
There's a high possibility there might have been. I mean, all those animals were here at one stage, and we've got a lot of bogs here in this country, and over the years, digging up the bogs to use for fuel, we've actually found mummified bodies of people who have died in that bog, and I think it's only a matter of time before they actually dig up something that's like, oh, what's this?
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
What kind of wildlife do you have over there right now?
The biggest animal you're going to run into here would be a badger.
Okay. Well.
Or we've got a few herds of wild deer living in national parks around the country.
Uh-huh. Okay.
That's about it.
I have heard reports of Bigfoot over there in Ireland, honestly.
Yeah.
It's very possible.
It is possible. I'm not really a member of any of the clubs over here, the paranormal clubs or the Bigfoot clubs, because I kind of tend to take a mountain monsters approach to things. If I'm going into somewhere that's supposed to be haunted or something, I'm not sitting there like, oh, please come and speak to me. I'm like, yo, bitch, where you at? Come on, attack me. Prove to me you're here.
Do you get out and do investigations and whatnot and look for banshees
I
or
do the
anything?
odd time. I've done a few solo ones. I've been in Scotland as well, doing a few there. I've been on Loch Ness.
Oh,
Ooh, that's where I want to
Yeah,
go.
I've had a bit of luck, more so than I'd call it luck in the paranormal universe. When I was actually on Loch Ness, you can actually take a boat trip out on the actual loch itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of said to the captain, I was like, "Oh, so any chance of seeing Nessie today?" And he looked at me, he was like, "Ah, oh, lad, you've no luck today." And they've got it when you're on this boat. They've actually got a constant sonar scanning the bottom of the lake. So I'm there chilling, and I'm looking at the guy looking at the sonar, and he kind of looks down at it, and he looks over at me, and then he looks back down, and he just gestures over to me. He's like, points. Now it was a little squiggle, and he's like, "There's definitely something there, anyway."
yeah,
Wow.
you never
Yeah.
know. You never know.
Yeah, I've had a lot more luck than most people when it comes to this kind of thing.
What can you tell us about Loch Ness? How was it? Was it really neat being there and all that?
I was there in the middle of March, and that's right up in the Highlands, so it was pretty cold. And I'm pretty good with in the cold, like, but that was cold. Um, there's also like Loch Ness has so much history about it. Like, there's actually a place on it where his name is gone from me now. Alistair Crowley used to own a
Oh,
house there.
yeah.
Yeah, so the place is just. And apparently, Robert Plant from the role from Led Zeppelin once actually owned that house, and he was chased out of it by what he described as snarling hellhound sounds.
Oh,
Really?
So it just sits there in ruins now at the moment.
wow.
Cool. I've heard of the hellhounds over there. Is that a thing over there?
In Ireland, heard of people seeing them, but again, going back to the residual hauntings, as I said, we used to have a lot of large wolves living here, dire wolves as
Mm-hmm.
well. We found fossils of dire wolves, so it's possible that that's what people are seeing. But I've
Oh.
got loads of other stories about other different Irish kind of cryptids if you want to hear them.
Yeah, I was looking some of those up. Yeah. Yeah, we'd love to hear some more about them.
So, believe it or not, depending on what Irish person you ask, do they believe in fairies? You might be surprised by the answer. So the fairies have been stuck in Irish mythology for years. I mean, you're going back centuries of people reporting, talking about the little people, and I don't mean leprechauns, but there are people who believe about them as well. But the fairies, basically, in 1999, there was talks to put a motorway in going down towards County Clare, and it was cutting through this part of land that had this large hawthorn bush sitting in the middle of it. And a man named Eddie Lenihan, who would have been a local folklorist, came out and said, don't do that. You demolish that tree, the fairies are going to ruin this motorway, which would be kind of like a highway for you guys, I suppose. Like 4 lanes of traffic going either direction.
Mm-hmm.
So, believe it or not, the government actually spent upwards of 1.2 million euro actually diverting this motorway slightly to the right to go around this tree. It still sits there to this day.
So somebody believed that.
Yeah.
There's also fairy forts, which would be a perfect ring of trees, perfect 360 of trees. And it's believed that these are where the fairies lived. But a couple of years before that, again, building a motorway, they actually cleared this fairy fort. And that area of motorway now has more reported accidents on it than any other motorway in this country.
Ooh.
So,
Are people describing what these fairies look like? How big they are?
well, you see, it'd be
a typical fairy, what you would think it would be?
they wouldn't be your typical fairies now. These would be a warring tribal people. Like, they wouldn't be like Tinkerbell flying around granting wishes for people. These are angry little shits. And if you mess with them, they're going to mess back with you. They're very, very vengeful. But people have never really reported seeing them. It's more so they're in our plane, but they can avoid seeing us. A bit like if you've ever read any Tolkien, a bit like what the Hobbits would be like.
Mm-hmm.
They're there, or even like what Bigfoot would be like. If it knows you're there before you're there, and if it doesn't want you to see it, you're not going to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Now there are people who have reported seeing leprechauns, which are believed to be in the same kind of realm, but obviously a leprechaun wouldn't be as mischievous as the actual fairies themselves. The fairies are just they're in a league of their own, and people to this day still believe in them. Like, there's people who will go and try tie ribbons to these fairy trees and make wishes for a sick loved one, or praying that they get that promotion at work or something, especially over in the west coast of Ireland.
We've talked about and heard about this thing called a puckwudgie. Is that kind of what these things could be? Is that the American version
Yeah,
of these things?
I've actually heard just talking about that on the shows. Yeah, it sounds very familiar to it. Like they would be, there's stories that they send out these things called pukas, which would literally translate as ghost, but they'll disguise themselves as horses, and they will lead you outside your house, calling to you. And when you go outside your house to see to this horse, the horse will vanish, and all of a sudden you're cursed for 10 years. And it's believed that the pukas and the fairies will be in line with each other. Now, these stories go back to really rural Ireland back in centuries ago, and it's probably related to like, oh, that's a horse, I could use that. Whereas nowadays, when you see a horse in Ireland, you're like, oh, there's a horse.
Yeah.
That's probably where these stories originated.
What's that horse doing here?
Yeah, right.
You see horses an awful lot, but they're in fields, and it's usually, I know in America, if you have a horse, it means you're rich, but in Ireland, it means you're dirt poor. It's
Really?
the complete opposite, yeah.
Isn't that crazy how cultures are?
That is.
Yeah.
What else you got going on over there, Ryan?
So we have a couple of lake monsters as well. Wouldn't be as famous as Nessie, but we have them. There's one called the Dowercoo, which Dower is the old Irish word for water, and coo means hound, so it literally translates as water hound. And this is believed to be a 7-foot long otter that inhabits the lakes and shorelines of Ireland. And there's actually historical evidence for this one being around at a point.
Did you say it was an otter?
A giant 7-foot otter, yeah.
Okay.
7 foot.
Sometimes people call it the Irish crocodile, but I don't really like Dowercoo, sounds better. So the story of this happens in 1722, where a woman named Grace McLaughlin was down washing her clothes by a lake, and her husband Terence arrived home, and he heard this scream. So he went down to investigate, and what he saw was this giant ass otter literally lying on his wife's half-eaten body. So he took his knife out, he stabbed this thing to death, and as this thing was dying, it let out a blood-curdling scream. And then another one came up out of the water and attacked him. He managed to kill this one as well. But in County Leitrim, there's actually a graveyard. It's called Enfield Graveyard. You can look it up. And on it, it has Grace McLaughlin. And above her name, there's a picture, a carving of an otter.
Wow.
And the exact year that this legend was said to have taken place. People still report seeing them.
Yeah, you don't know what's out there. People don't understand what could be out there.
Absolutely. People have no idea. I think it's a fact some people just do not want to even fathom that this could be possible.
That's what I've been saying.
I mean, we've got this, especially Bigfoots. Imagine, finding out that there's this apex animal in the woods. We've believed for so long. It's like, we are the apex.
We're the top of the food chain, yeah.
Imagine hearing about this thing. It's 8 foot tall. It's probably smarter than us. It's able to blend into its surrounding. There'd be mass hysteria. People would lose their shit.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry for swearing.
No, you're fine. I think I'm more scared of the 7-foot long otter than I would be of a Bigfoot. Those otters.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I'd like to see that.
I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see
People
that.
are still reporting seeing it. Like there was an artist, he was down I think it was Ori Island a couple of years ago, and he reported seeing this thing. Now Ori Lake, it'd be about 100 feet wide, and he said this thing crossed the lake in seconds. It jumped up on a boulder, turned, let out this howl, and then disappeared.
Have you guys ever heard of the Mapinguari?
I haven't heard it. I've heard of them, but that's supposed to be like the South American Bigfoot, right?
Yeah, well, it's actually a creature in South America, I believe. Don't quote me on this, but I saw a documentary on this. It's like a giant sloth.
Yes.
Maybe like 8-10 foot tall or long, kind of thing. So
yeah.
It's very possible that some of these creatures that are smaller can get bigger in size and grow. Like you talked about the dire wolf; those things are huge.
Yeah, monsters.
Seen a video on that too. But if these things like mapinguaris can exist and people are claiming to see them, there's no reason why that there can't be other creatures like otters or whatever that can get way bigger than they really are and exist and not be seen.
Yeah, especially in places like South America. I mean, like how vast is the Amazon?
Well, the Amazon, yeah. Who knows what's living in there?
Oh no, there couldn't be anything in there that we don't know about.
Yep.
Idiots.
Right.
That's all. That's the only way I can describe them.
You're right.
True.
People need to have open minds, you know?
Yeah, they do. And I find that, people who immediately dismiss things like Bigfoot as like, they're kind of saying, oh yeah, well, there's a possibility it might have existed, but it's extinct now.
You're listening to the Cryptid Creatures Podcast with Todd and Brian. If you've had an encounter and want to be on the show, email us at info@cryptidcreatures.co or leave a message at 888-5-DOG-MAN.
I always like to point to the coelacanth. Are you aware of the coelacanth?
Yeah, the coelacanth.
Coelacanth, yeah.
Right?
They just found one.
And we found it, yeah. Giant squids.
Coelacanths were supposed to be extinct millions of years, and a guy goes over an Asian country, I can't remember where it was at, and there's just dudes off the pier just catching them.
Yeah.
And like eating them. And they're like, it's nothing to them. Oh yeah, we've been catching these things forever. It's like, what?
A bit like, I suppose it'd be a bit like the Native Americans and Sasquatch. From what I believe, those guys, they like, some of them don't even want to talk about it. They're terrified of it, but they respect it, and they're like, yeah, it's there. Like, we've been living alongside these things for a century.
Yeah, there's no way there's this many people seeing this and describing this thing very similar, if not the same, every time, and not something be real out there. They have nothing to gain from it,
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think anyone who comes forward with these stories has anything to gain, really.
No. Maybe ridicule from people. That's about it, So, have you guys had any Bigfoot sightings or encounters in your area where you're at? Have you ever heard of anything over there?
Well, I'm actually in one of the major cities in Ireland, so for me to actually see a Bigfoot around here would be quite rare. but well, with the rate the country's growing, it could start leaping over into our. But I have spoken to some people who have reported saying that they seen it, or at least heard it. I spoke to a guy who was up in County Fermanagh. This would have been 2010, I think he said it was. But he said he was out walking in a forest. We have a large mountain up there, and it has a boardwalk going up, but we call it the Stairway to Heaven. This guy, there's a bit of a forest before you get there, and this guy was walking towards it, and he said he just heard like these large footfalls coming through the forest alongside him. And he said when he got to the foot of the mountain, it stopped. And he stood there for about 5 minutes looking around, couldn't see anything. But that was it. That was the end of it.
Right. Getting paralleled, followed.
Yeah. Is that what you call that?
We call it paralleling. Yeah, right here. Something was paralleling me.
Walking beside you.
Or stalking. Yeah. Stalking's another good word.
Yeah. Well, that's what we would have called it.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to Vancouver now next March, and my friend who lives there is taking me to Vancouver, Ireland. So I'm hoping I'll get my chance
to go up there.
Go squatching for the first time.
If someone told me you can go anywhere you want to go squatching, I would pick Vancouver Island every time.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah.
All right, do you know if they're violent or not up there?
If they're violent?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I don't know. The Pacific Northwest, they don't seem to be as violent there.
Right. Because, as I said, the approach I take to it, if something starts throwing rocks at me, I'm going to start throwing them back.
Yeah. Maybe you'll have something to come back and tell us, I hope,
Hopefully.
But yeah, that's a highly densely populated Bigfoot island, in my belief.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of reports from there. So
a lot.
Mm-hmm. I can't wait to get there.
When are you going?
Next March.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's a paddy abroad, so I'm going over to spend St. Patrick's Day with him.
Awesome. We'll have to see what happens, and if anything comes down, to get in touch with us and let us know.
Yeah, and let us know.
So, yeah, I'm hoping something happens. I've had luck with everything else, so why not Bigfoots?
Yeah.
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 So you're into, are you pretty much a cryptozoologist, so to speak, over there in Ireland? Or you're into all this stuff? You're going out and researching and whatnot?
I'd be a self-proclaimed one. I don't think anyone else here really recognizes me as one.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like I said, they really don't agree with my methods that I do. Like, there's a place in the Dublin Mountains called the Hellfire Club, and it's supposed to be one of the most haunted places in the country. And the story goes that it's an old hunting lodge, and the story goes that a group of guys were up there one night playing cards, and they got a knock at the door. There was this traveller. They said, yeah, come in, sit down by the fire, play cards with us. Now they're sitting there and they're playing cards, and one of the guys drops his cards on the floor, and as he bends down to pick his cards up, where this traveller is sitting, there's no feet, there's a pair of hooves. So he gets back up. The guy pulls down his hood, reveals he's the devil, and then shoots up through the chimney. And it's chills. An extremely eerie feeling when you're up there. It's horrifying. You just feel uneasy being there. I was actually up there on a date with a girl once, and we were standing. I was like, "Oh, can we go up to the Hellfire Club?" And she was like, "No, I know what you're like. I'm not taking you up there." So I eventually managed to talk her into it, and we're standing inside, which would have been the area where this card game happened. We're standing side by side, and I started messing, trying to scare her, and I said, "Oh, is anybody there?" And nothing, and she kind of elbows me like, "Shut up." And I just kind of said, I was like, "Where are you?" And we were standing close to each other, but it was like something stuck its face in between the two of us and just went, "Here." I went to turn to look at her to be like, "Holy shit." And it was like, do you ever see a Scooby-Doo cartoon where they just leave a silhouette of smoke there? He was gone. So I wanted to stick around, but I had to follow her. I was like, oh, because if she goes missing, I was the last person with her. I'm going to get the blame.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, why didn't you follow her? I was following a voice I thought was a ghost.
The ghost had me. Yeah, that's definitely some creepy, scary stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Todd, I believe you're the one who has a fear of dogmen.
That is me, yes.
That's Todd, yep.
Well, I don't think you'd be too afraid of the dogmen we reportedly have here.
What you got over there?
These guys are called the werewolves of Ossory. Ossory.
I just read about those this morning.
Yeah. Ossory would have been an ancient Irish kingdom. And it's believed that they're descended from a group of warrior men known as the Fina. And these men would have kind of warged into a wolf's body when going to war and when going on raids, leaving their body vulnerable, of course. But eventually, after all this kind of calmed down, they settled in the kingdom of Ossory. And it's said that when St. Patrick arrived in Ireland, he heard of the atrocities that these people's ancestors had committed and cursed them that every 7 years, a man and a woman would inhabit a wolf's body and would have to stay in that wolf's body for 7 years. And then when that 7 years would up, it would pass to another man and a woman.
Okay.
Wow.
So yeah, you always hear about St. Patrick chasing the snakes out of Ireland, but you never hear anything about the werewolves.
Right.
We'll keep that bit quiet.
Yeah. Well, the thing about the dogman to me is, as you look at it alongside Bigfoot, is you definitely don't have as many encounters. There's definitely a lot less of these things going around, or they're just really better at hiding and stay put where they're at. But saying what you're saying kind of makes more sense that, if these things only came out every 7 years, or is a different person every 7 years, if there's any truth to that, then that makes a lot of sense why you don't see as many. Are there sightings over there going on?
I've heard of a few sightings, and it's people are reporting seeing these almost 8-foot wolves on all fours. They say they're 8 foot when they stand up, but they're about 4 foot high, kind of the size of a dire wolf. But they say when they see them, they don't feel intimidated. It's almost like the wolf locks eyes with them, and they almost feel this immense sorrow come over them, like the creature is in pain, and they just feel sympathy for them. Now, we do have a breed of dog, the Irish Wolfhound. People are saying, you're just seeing Irish Wolfhounds. I can personally guarantee the two of you that there are not packs of Irish Wolfhounds roaming the Irish countryside. It's just not possible. It's just really not possible.
Mm-hmm.
They're a very controlled breed here.
I've seen a video of a dire wolf recently. Brian, have you seen that one where that dog runs up?
Yeah.
And it's kind of sitting in a patch of trees. You can see it clearly. It's a wolf, a huge black wolf. It's huge. It's 2.5 times the size of a regular wolf. And people don't really know how big wolves really get. They're 150 to 180 pounds regular.
Mm-hmm. Regular wolves are huge.
So this thing was definitely a dire wolf, what people call dire wolves. And this is recent. This wasn't just back in the day. This is very recent. And it's a real video. There's no way I don't think this was messed with at all. So, these things are here and they're moving around. Are they walking on 2 legs? I don't know, but
whether they're walking on 2 legs or walking on 4 legs, I can tell you, I definitely don't want to bump into one. I wouldn't mind bumping into one here, but the reports I hear coming from your side of the pond, I don't think I want to bump into one over there.
I mean, I do, but no, I don't.
I'd like to see it, from a safe distance. We don't have guns in Ireland, so if one shows up over here, I don't think we'd last very long.
Don't have guns in Ireland.
No.
Oh,
there's a few people who aren't guns. Like our police force aren't armed.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Now there's shooting clubs and all over here. They'd be the kind of people who'd have guns, but your average civilian just doesn't have one.
That's probably a good thing. That's probably a good thing.
Gun crime would still be quite high here, though. Wouldn't be as high as knife crime, but it would be quite high. But like everywhere, has its problems.
Oh, sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Anything else going on over there that you want
what else
share
you got
us today?
We have a lake monster that's believed to be a cousin of Nessie.
Okay.
And
really?
It is believed to inhabit the lakes of Killarney. And we've named him Mucky because the largest lake in Killarney is called Muckross Lake. So Mucky, Nessie, we ripped off the Scots. But then again, there was an Irishman who first sighted Nessie. The first recorded sighting of Nessie was by an Irishman, a guy by the name of Saint Columba. In 2003, a group of biologists were doing sonar at the lake to get an idea of the fish population there. And they reported seeing almost a 30-foot long blip on the sonar. So I don't know what to make it at, like a 30-foot long blip when you're scanning for fish.
Yeah.
And we know there are underwater tunnels that come out of the Killarney lakes and actually link into the sea. So if something wanted to come in and just spend the summer there and then go back out, although I don't know why I'd want to spend the summer in Ireland. The weather's not even good in summer. It's probably 10 degrees outside today, and that's barbecue weather here.
Wow.
No kidding.
I was going to ask you if that was landlocked or not. I don't think Loch Ness is landlocked either, and there's ways to get in and out to the ocean.
Yeah, right? I always thought Loch Ness was landlocked because in Ireland we call our lakes lochs as well, but they are landlocked. A lot of them are landlocked. But in Scotland, I think a loch is literally like just a really wide berth of water.
Mm-hmm.
From what I understand from being there, like they all do link to the sea. So
there are tunnels. Yeah.
And I mean, people are like, oh no, like lake monsters? No way. It's like, sure, we know more about the surface of the moon than we do about what's under the sea.
We do.
And people are saying, oh no, like I'd have more trouble with people not believing in lake monsters than not believing in Bigfoot or ghosts. I was like, but we don't know what's down there.
No.
We haven't the slightest clue.
Well, especially up there because you guys are right on the North Sea, and that's a very deep and very cold body of water. So who knows what's in the bottom of that thing?
It's where it's where the original stories of Krakens came from. The Norsemen crossing over down here. So have you ever heard of the Greenland shark?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that thing exists like in one of the most inhospitable places on the planet. Like what else? What's to say something else couldn't be there?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we don't know what's down there. We've never drained the ocean and looked.
No.
So.
And hopefully we never do.
There's probably
right.
way more things in the ocean than there are walking land that we don't know about, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And, it's very possible for an aquatic animal to survive through anything for long periods of time in water, deep down. Like the Greenland shark, doesn't the Greenland shark live in like dark? I mean, it's basically blind.
Yeah, it is. It's completely blind.
And they can live for like a long time. They
determine. Like even, have you heard the story of Jacques Cousteau? I can't remember which lake in America he went into. I think it was Lake Champlain. And he went down in his little sub. And when he came back up, he said to everyone there, the world's not ready for what's down there. I
believe that.
Jacques Cousteau even said that himself.
Jacques Cousteau said that.
Oh, man. Yeah, there's so much going on out there and so much happening that people are seeing, hearing, what have you, and we can't put a finger on it.
I mean, a lot of these things, like, they fascinate me that they exist, but at the same time, I hope they don't become general public knowledge to be existent. I've three reasons for that. One, I'm kind of against animals being kept in captivity, and especially really intelligent ones, like the dolphins and whales. But if we find out Bigfoot's real, and if it's as intelligent as it is, I don't want to see that thing in a zoo. It's going to go crazy. And that's the first thing people are going to do. It's like, oh, let's get that and put it in a zoo. That'd be a big attraction. And also the fact that, you know, you're going to get these Karens like, oh my God, think of the children. I don't want to go in the woods. We need to kill all those things. Let's wipe another species off the planet.
Yep.
You know, and then the other chance is you're like, we are just going to become, people aren't going to be able to accept that we're not the apex predator on this planet anymore.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying. People don't want to know.
It's going to mess up a lot of people. You know, I just think people are just happy living in their bubbles of like, I'm safe here. I don't want to know what's out there. Those things don't exist out there. Most of the people who say this are scientists who have never spent a day in the woods.
Oh, yeah.
They've sat behind a desk their entire life reading documents that other people have brought back. It's like, get out there. Just step outside your shell. Get outside and experience nature. You might not have the experiences we have, but, you know, you'll have lived.
Right.
Yeah.
You'll realize that, you know, maybe there is more to it than what my closed-minded thinks there is in this world.
Especially when you realize how vast some of these places are. Like when I was in Florida, we went to the Everglades, and I thought the Everglades would have just been like a small swamp. I couldn't believe how big it was.
Yeah, the Everglades is huge.
Yeah, I couldn't believe how big it was.
Yeah.
Absolutely blew my mind.
How to get to the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, I can't wait. I really can't wait. See, I've been in Vancouver before, but we never actually got the chance to go to Vancouver Island. But when I was there, he took me to a place called Grouse Mountain. And like, it's 20 minutes outside the city, and it's like you're in the middle of nowhere. Absolute beauty beyond belief. Just the forests, unbelievably gorgeous. It's like this is just on people's doorsteps, and people just don't know how vast or how dangerous it is.
I have no idea.
Like places like that, like 100%. Yeah, this is where a Sasquatch could live and survive, or even a family of them. But as I said, places in Ireland, we're not that big of a country. I think you can fit the entirety of Ireland inside the Texas. Like, so, you know, if there was something here, I'm feeling we would have saw it by now. But then again, there are people who claim to have seen it. I'm just not, me personally, I wouldn't be a believer of actually Sasquatches living in Ireland. Yeah. I just don't see how it'd be possible.
Do you guys have any cave systems over there that you know of in Ireland?
In the Burren in County Clare, it's a big limestone landscape, and they've created thousands of underground caves, and you can actually tour a lot of them. But the most they found in them are bear fossils. They haven't found anything, you know, shocking. As I said, a lot of the caves in Ireland are big tourist attractions. Yeah. So now that's not to say there's hidden caves we don't know about, because of course there is.
Right.
Well, you talked about things being there years ago that don't exist anymore, like the bears and the wolves and whatnot. Yeah. You guys are an island, right? So
we are, yeah.
It's very possible that there isn't things like Bigfoot there, whatnot. You know, if something they would have had definitely crossed the ocean to get there. I don't think they're capable of making a boat yet, but you know, I think that's very feasible that they're not there because of that reason. And if they were, you know, they could have died off.
As I'm saying, we're digging up that bog like nobody's business, finding bog bodies. If you actually go on and you type in the National Museum of Ireland and just bog bodies, they will show you pictures of the bodies that they found. You can still see the expressions on these people's faces. Oh, wow. They're very, very well preserved.
Wow.
And who's not to say we haven't already dug a Bigfoot body up, and our government got in contact with your government and was like, we found this, and they were like, say nothing.
Yeah.
Because
don't tell anybody.
I don't like to go into how bad our government is, but they cannot make decisions for themselves.
No, I mean,
just like ours, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You think about the whole world where people are seeing Bigfoot, Yetis, and whatever they call them in those countries. I mean, I don't think every government in the world is trying to cover up Bigfoot, maybe necessarily.
I know.
Definitely in the United States, I will say we're keeping it a hush-hush because we know. But I don't know if the other countries even really have had a body to sample. Maybe they're so vast that these things are just staying where they need to be.
Entirely possible. I mean, if the abominable snowman is real, the Yeti, I mean, like, that's Mount Everest. It's the Himalayas, one of the most least populated places on the planet. If something wants to hide out there and never be seen, it's going to do it.
Oh, for sure.
The same with the Yowie that lives in Australia.
Australia, yeah.
Is it the Orang Pendek that lives in Vietnam?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, dense jungle. This thing could easily hide for centuries.
Oh, yeah, especially in Vietnam. That's just crazy jungle.
Yeah. serious jungle.
The thing that cracks me up the most is people say, well, Bigfoot can't be real. Bigfoot can't be real. But yet they know that gorillas that are huge, that we have, walking around, in the zoos or out in the wilderness, they believe in those. They know those are real.
Yeah.
Or you talk about the orang pendek, which is actually a smaller version of a Bigfoot. I think it's more like an orangutan style.
More like an orangutan. Yeah.
Yeah. But we have orangutans, and people know that they're real. But no way can there be a primate walking around Northern America that's 8 foot tall. It's not possible. Forget it. No way. But gorillas are real. Gorillas are real. But you know what I'm saying?
It's like anything. Like if science hasn't proved it exists, we don't want to know.
Right, exactly.
People like that, and I'm like, right, you enjoy your bubble. I'm gonna go over here. Just don't have an opinion. Don't formulate your own opinion on anything. You do what your government tells you. Yeah. Good boy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You know, I definitely like to keep an open mind about things in life in general, and believe a lot differently now than I used to, and how I was brought up.
Yeah, the experiences I've had in life have just led me to have an open mind. Yeah, like this stuff started for me when I was 10 years old, and I've had countless things happen since then. I've seen UFOs. I've heard disembodied voices around houses, just crazy stuff.
Tell us about the UFO real quick.
Oh, so my friend who I was telling you about who saw the Banshee, me and him, we only would say this would have been around 2005, so long before, commercial drones were a thing, or those Chinese lanterns that people light off. They just weren't a thing here at the time. And me and him were out, we would have been about 14, 15 years old at the time. And, we were out, I think we were smoking and drinking, but we were trying to hide it from our parents because, being young teenagers, you're not supposed to be doing that. But we were out in a part of our housing estate, and we were like, right, come on, we'll head home. So we started walking towards home. And as we turned the corner, I saw this, it was just like a giant orange orb in the sky, and it was just hovering there. So I just kind of nudged him, and I was like, tell me you see that as well. And he looks up and he goes, yeah, what is that? And we stood there and we watched it hover there for about 5 minutes. And then it darted right. And then it darted left. And then it just shot straight up. And that was it. It was gone. People report seeing UFOs all over this country.
Did you guys tell anybody about what you saw?
I've told everybody. Anybody who listen, I'll tell them about it. Because I'm like, you know what, this is what I believe. If you don't want to believe it, that's fair enough. Just remember, there's people out there who believe that a man once walked on water and turned wine into water, or turned water into wine. So this is what I believe. He, for years, didn't want to tell anybody about it. And yeah, fair enough, because in Ireland, even when we're being nice to you, we will ridicule you. It's just how it's just our way of being friendly. Like, if I had a friend here, I'd probably introduce him as a big fecker. This is my friend, this is my mate here, he's a bit of a dickhead, don't worry about him. But that's just how we are. So if you're saying something that goes against the social norms in this country, you're going to get ridiculed, and not in a friendly way. Yeah. So he kept it quiet for a while, but he speaks openly about it now. He knows we saw something.
Right. Well, Ireland has always been more of the paranormal, mystical, magical place.
We're an ancient land.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff has happened here.
Oh, yeah.
Again, back to the residual hauntings. If anything that happened here over the last 1,000 years is anything to go by, this place is probably one of the most haunted places in the world.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah, I want to check out the places you talked about and the locations that you were talking about on the map.
And I definitely would.
Take a look at it and read up on some of that. The werewolves of Ossuary, is that what you called?
Yeah,
Ossuary?
That's it,
Yeah, check that out too.
I sent you a link, Todd.
Okay, awesome. I got something to look at today.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. It's absolutely, like, you hear about the snakes all the time, but never the werewolves.
Mm-hmm. Give me a reason to be more scared of these things, right?
Well, as I said, these things seem to be quite friendly.
Yeah, I don't think they're like the howling werewolves.
Okay.
Yeah, the story of a man called Gerald of Wales, and he was actually walking through a forest in Ireland, and with that, this giant wolf approached him, and he was terrified, and he said, the wolf actually spoke to him and said, don't be afraid. I have a female. He told him the whole story about St. Patrick cursing him. And he said, my wife is in the forest. She's very ill. Will you give her the last rites? So the priest went along and he performed the last rites on this wolf. And then the husband wolf pulled back the wolf's skin to reveal a frail old lady. And she died. And the wolf thanked him for what he'd done and sent him on his way.
Wow.
And this is recorded by, I have his name here. Yeah, Gerald of Wales, I was right. But as I said before, I don't really like to hang on a lot of things that the Catholic Church have said, especially for the atrocities they've committed here. Like, they had a chokehold on this country right up into the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Like, women and baby shelters, you know, I don't even want to talk about what the priests used to do to young boys. We've finally gotten out of the shadow of the Catholic Church here, thank God. But, like, there are parts of it that, you know, it's dark history that you don't really want to go into.
Right.
But you need to talk about it because people need to know what happened.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
There are still victims coming forward to this day from being in the all-boys schools run by the brothers.
We really appreciate you coming on and talking about all this stuff, man.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to do
no
it.
kidding. What time is it over there right now?
It's 3:30 in the afternoon right now.
3:30.
Yeah.
3:30.
Yeah, 3:30. Sorry.
No, you're fine. I was just thinking how you say things completely different, which is cool, but I understand exactly what you're saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
I was actually talking to a bunch of girls two girls from Texas in a bar a couple of weeks ago. And they just kind of said, "Oh, what time does this place close at?" And I says, "Oh, about 1:15 in the morning." And they're like, 1:15? I was like, "Sorry, 1:15."
Well, I say 1:15. I mean,
Well, yeah. I'll say that.
All right. Well, we'll let you get out and get back to your craziness over there, Ryan. Again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Contact us with something that happens on Vancouver Island.
Yeah, please do. Let us know.
Oh.
Shoot us a message or email us and let us know what's going on.
Absolutely.
And remind us about it. I'll forget
Really
a year from now. But yeah, that's awesome. I take some pictures and shoot them to us too.
Oh,
Put them on our group.
Yeah. Keep us posted. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, man. Well, again, thank you, and
no
you
problem.
have a good one, and we'll be in touch. We'll talk to you soon.
You too, lads. Best of luck.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. We appreciate it. See ya.
See ya.
See ya.
You know, he told us in an email that his accent might throw us off, but I was thinking Irish accent before we talked to him, and by golly, he had one.
Yeah, me too. And it was definitely an Irish accent.
Yeah. It's
I don't know what he was talking about, but
it's weird how they say some things, you know, and you pick them up in English format, so to speak. So
yeah, he was cool. I like that. That was fun.
Yeah, he's.
I definitely would not ever want to run across the Banshee. I can tell you that.
No, me either. That would freak me out, I think, more than seeing a Bigfoot.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure. So hopefully he'll keep us posted when he takes his trip to the big Canada.
Yeah, man, how lucky is that going to be going to Vancouver Island? I really hope he has some interaction and gets back to us.
I know. I hope he has some luck. Yeah,
so
it'll be fun.
Anyway, man, we'll get out of here. Let our listeners get on with their day or their evening or whatever it is they're doing. So again, I appreciate hanging out with you, and I thank you again for hanging out with me.
Always fun. Always learning.
All right, you take care until next time.
All right, man. See ya.